Hello everyone, nice to see you. I'm Jodie Miles, I'm the Education Manager at Equestrian New South Wales, and I'm going to share my screen now so that we can go to this PowerPoint and get started. So let's get started. So managing events in hot weather, very timely for this, which is the reason why I'm running it now. I don't want to run it in winter because now we're about to hit that really hot season where we do have to look out for certain things when we are running events. I know events are kind of winding up, but it's really good to have this ready for February when it does get really hot and humidity steps in. So, as I said, Jodie Miles, I'm the Equestrian New South Wales Education Manager. That's me there with my Andalusian mare, Ciela. And we do working equitation. So that's me doing a dressage test as part of the working equitation 3 phases. So just a couple of things on logistics of this session. First of all, if you could keep your microphones muted, that would be great because lots of things happen in houses at this time of night and we don't need to hear all of those. I won't be monitoring the chat function because I can't do too many things at once, and looking and reading chats and messages at the same time as presenting really throws me. And I also don't like it popping up all the time. So I will ask you to make a note of your questions as you go through the presentation. If something comes to mind, make a note of it. If I haven't answered your question with the content that I'm going to give you, then ask the question when we get to the end. There will be plenty of time for questions. So if I could just get people now to say who you are and which club you're from in the chat box, then a little introduction to yourself. You're Susan and you're from dressage, Byron Bay, whatever it is, just put that in and then everyone can kind of see who we've got on the call. This session is being recorded and it will be sent out to people who have registered for the course, for the program. That is so that you can watch it in your own time just in case you weren't able to watch tonight. So hi to all those people who are watching the recording. Okay, let's have a look now at what I'm going to cover in this session and the things we're going to talk about. So in this session, you will learn what constitutes extreme hot weather for horse welfare. So what is it that we're talking about in terms of hot weather? The Equestrian Australia hot weather policy, we will look at that. What the considerations are for organisers, and I've put those into 6 different categories. The signs of heat, so we'll cover that, and how your committee can prepare. So things that you can things that you can do as a committee to make sure that you're providing everything that you need to provide for an event in hot weather. And then also where to go for more information. So I've got links which I will cover off, but I'll also send the links out as part of when I send the recording out so that you can just click through those links to go to places that I talk about tonight for more information. And then there'll be time for questions. Okay, so let's get started on the first one. The EA hot weather policy. So one thing to note, I've got 2 quotes here and they are directly out of the EA hot weather policy. And the first one is the primary responsibility for the welfare of the horses competing and exercising during hot weather lies with the rider of the horse. So riders must always take action to prevent, manage and treat heat stress in their horses. So it's up to the rider. However, event organisers are responsible for providing adequate facilities and information that riders need to safeguard the welfare of their horses. So access to ice and cooling water during competition is compulsory. It's a requirement that arises under certain environmental conditions. So yes, the responsibility lays with the rider, but the organiser is responsible for providing what the rider needs to manage the welfare of the horse in hot weather. So what constitutes extreme hot weather? So to assess the risk of heat stress in horses, the EA and FEI uses the wet bulb globe temperature index. So that's the WBGT, and it's an index that it gives information on gives a figure, and I'll show you an example in a minute. It gives you a figure to use as a cutoff for certain conditions. So the WGBT information is on the Bureau of Meteorology, the BOM. It's in Australia. It's also, and it's in their thermal comfort observation webpage. It's also included in the EA hot weather policy, which is probably easier to find than on the BOM. So this is an example of the wet bulb globe temperature. This is how you read it. From the left-hand side, you've got relative humidity as a percentage. Up the top, from left to right, you've got the temperature. So you can see there, right in the middle of the graph of the what's this called? A matrix kind of thing, is I've got a box around 29. So that is if it was a temperature of 32 degrees, so we go across the top and we get to 32, and we've got humidity of 35%, then the WBGT is 29. And as you can see, it cuts off at 39, and I'll explain why that does why it's like that. So then if you go to the EA hot weather policy and you go, okay, on this, we've got a WBGT of 29. What does 29 mean? So less than 28, it tells you what to do, but between 28 and 30, so this is where we sit, so 29, so that's where any temperatures that are between 29 and, or an example is 29 degrees and 60% relative humidity. The recommendations for competitions is that some precautions to reduce heat load on horses will be necessary. They suggest that we have shaded areas for competition and warm-up areas, avoid non-grassed riding surfaces where possible, and reduce overall effort. So shorter distance, less jumping efforts, less warm-up, and lots of cool down, and then make competition PA announcements and repeat those frequently. So that's reminding people that it is precautions are required, that extra hosing might be needed. It may be that you have someone standing next to the marshals, and when the horse comes out of their dressage arena, someone is standing there with a bucket of water and a sponge, and the horses all get sponged down whilst they are having gear check, or while the rider's talking to their kiss and cry area, that the horses immediately start getting sponged down. And so cooling facilities and methods, so in that last column on the right-hand side, access to at least 2 wash bays with freely running water via hoses and shaded areas and shelters. And each horse may need to be hosed with 2 hoses, one on either side, for 20 to 40 minutes if heat stressed. So that's the EA hot weather policy in terms of the wet bulb globe index. The policy so that's the example we had, 32 degrees and 35%. The policy is really, I've got the link to it. It is on the Equestrian Australia website. It's worthwhile downloading that, having a copy available with your club in every time you have a get together, you've got that there ready to assess, as well as, discussing beforehand. And we'll get to this when we go down the track of, what committees can do. But knowing where it is, knowing what it looks like, knowing how to read it when you do get to that questionable, you're looking at, are we going to go ahead? You need to be able to read that wet bulb globe index table. Now, if the WBGT is higher than 33, so that table went to 39, but if it's higher than 33, the EA policy states these environmental conditions are very high risk and are probably not compatible with safe competition. So consult with a vet, move to cooler time of day, and then there's other things that it refers to in the policy. So 33 is the number to remember in your head. 33 is the figure that you're kind of going, okay, if it's 33, this is what we need to do. We really need to seriously think about whether or not we're going to go ahead and what changes we can make. So these are the considerations for organisers. Number one, and I'm going to go into these in detail, is humidity and heat. So we know it's those two things that are the things we take into consideration in terms of temperature and humidity. The 6-minute threshold, which I'll explain about, wind flow and breeze. So this is really important to know where to move a horse to and anywhere that you can get air on them. So I'll go into detail on that. The surface area to body mass index. So that's really interesting. We'll talk about that. Arena and surfaces, things to be mindful in terms of surfaces, like we've already heard, to try and use grass areas because grass is better than sand. Event planning. So we'll talk about that. There's sorts of things that you can do as a committee in terms of planning. So let's have a look at the first one, humidity and heat. So high heat and high humidity impacts severely on horses on their main cooling system. So that's when they sweat and they're sweating because they want to have evaporation. So heat stress is most common on days with the high temperature, high humidity and low wind. So that's another thing to look at. So you can have high temps, high humidity, but if you've got a breeze, it does, that might get you out of difficult situations with horses because the breeze helps to cool them down faster. If there's low wind, it's a recipe for disaster with high humidity and high temps. So unless cooling facilities up to FEI standard are in place at an event, the FEI strongly recommends that riding activities be suspended when the WBGT index reaches or exceeds 32 to 33. So there's that number 33. All right, the 6-minute threshold. So what is the 6-minute threshold? So when the WBGT index is high, 6 minutes to 6.5 minutes of continuous hard work, which is called the 6-minute threshold, is pivotal in causing heat stress. So there's a difference between working a horse on a hot day for 6 minutes compared to 7 minutes. Once you go over 6.5 minutes to 7 minutes, that's when it's really hard for a horse to cool down. It's more likely to bring on heat stress under those conditions if you work them longer than 6 minutes. Show jumpers, generally, they're working under 6 minutes. Once they get out into the show jump ring, it's being mindful of what the warm-up looks like. Obviously, you need to warm up, but you want everything to be really concise and the conditions to be good to work longer than 6 minutes. Dressage and cross-country horses are at risk in heat because the effort that they do exceeds the 6-minute threshold. And in that case, so if you're running an event in competition, then aggressive cooling should be used if the WBGT index is high. So I was at the office today at SIAC. They're setting up for the Sydney 3-day event. And around in between arenas, there was, like you'd have at a service station, the chests, the things that you go into the service station and get the key for to get the ice out, they had those set up. So ice will be in there. So they're already thinking, provide the ice for those eventers. All right, that's now wind flow and the breeze. So wind flow significantly increases evaporation, which is the main cooling mechanism for horses and humans. We know what it's like when we're hot, when we're sweating, and we're like, oh my gosh, I wish there was a breeze. The horses are doing the same thing. They're like, put me somewhere where there's a breeze. Horses standing in the sun without shade or wind flow in temperatures above 33 degrees start to accumulate heat. So shade and wind flow are important. On hot days, events should be scheduled early or late. So think about if it looks like you're going to hit that 33 WBGT, then think, can we start at 6 a.m.? Can we start at 7 a.m. and be done by 11? Or can we start at 3 and be done by 7? So start thinking about different ways that you can run your event in terms of timing. Horses working in the sun without wind flow at or above 33 are at risk, 33 degrees Celsius. The next thing, so surface area to body mass index. So as the body mass increases, so more muscle, the relative surface area decreases. So, for example, an 80 kilogram rider will have a surface area body mass index of 1 to 40. But a 500 kilo horse, which is a relatively smallish horse, like 14 hand, 15 hand horse, has a SABM of 1 to 100. So that's how the body mass is really heavy and the surface area is really small compared to their body mass. So it's really hard. They don't have enough surface area to get cool quickly. The high surface area body mass makes it extremely difficult for horses to shed heat through evaporation because they don't have enough area. The more muscle a horse has, the harder it is for them to shed heat. And I've got some photos coming up, and you'll see there's eventers, there's racehorses. Racehorses on hot days have heaps of trouble with heat stress. And they're lean and they've got lots of muscle. So it's very, very hard for them to cool down. This is a photo that I found from the Olympics. So I know if you've watched dressage in Paris or any like Tokyo, they take the horses out to gear check and they go into a tent and there's those massive, massive fans and misting happening to cool the horses down. Now, this is talking about arena and surfaces. So what are the surface areas that are better to deal with for the horses to deal with in terms of heat? So shaded and grassy surfaces don't attract and retain as much heat as other surfaces that are soil-based or exposed to full sunlight. Horses restrained next to vehicles, floats and trucks, and if they're parked on black asphalt or road base or sand, are more susceptible to heat stress on hot days. You've got the reflection coming off the floats and the trucks. You've got the heat coming up from the black ground. You've got not much air movement between trucks and floats. So all of those things are things that you can remind people about as a committee and just go around and check and just get the horses into spaces that they can get airflow. And then number 6 in this section is conducting a risk assessment. So in terms of event planning, one of the things that you really must do, and you should be doing this anyway, but it's really good to revisit every time you do an event, is what is the weather risk. So conducting a risk management assessment if the competition training days are to be held during hot conditions. Decisions and actions that may be considered include alteration of the time of day or year that the event is run. So I've spoken about that a little bit already. Reduction in overall effort. So shorter distance, less jumping efforts, less warm up, those kinds of things. Education of riders, grooms and officials. So a pre-event briefing to all. So getting everyone together at the beginning of the session or the beginning of the event and saying, this is what the conditions are today. These are the things that we will be reminding you of throughout the course of the day. And then having someone, an official or even just a committee member going around and checking for the signs of heat stress, which we'll talk about in a minute, but just going around and reminding people and making sure, like making sure show horses don't have 3 cotton rugs on. Those kinds of things, making sure that there's air getting in and around horses so that they can stay cool. Provision of shade. So is there anything that you can do to add more shade? Can you move the arena down to a different section? Try and think outside the box of how you can provide shade. Provision of adequate means of cooling horses. So ice, fans, hoses, water baths, things like that. Provision of veterinary services for heat-stressed horses. So having that list ready of who are the vets local that you can call if need be, if there is a horse that goes down with heat stress. All right, so signs. What are the signs of heat stress in horses? So the first thing is excessive sweating, where horses are completely covered in sweat or there's sweat running from their body. So that this is when a horse is stressed from heat, not just sweating, but like excessively sweating. It's dripping off them. Where the horse feels very hot to touch, so you put your hand on them and you're like, oh, that's hot. When you run the water over them and the water that's dripping off them is warm. That's another way. When they're blowing very hard, so deep labored breathing with really flared nostrils, and you can tell that they're struggling to get air in. They may become agitated, distressed, or have irrational behavior of some kind. They might collapse, so down on the ground, just kind of lying there, whatever's going on is going on. And then prominent blood vessels in the skin, so their veins and might start to pop out. And if you're really worried, if they're down on the ground, take their temperature, and if it's above 40 degrees, that's heat stress. So what does the FEI recommend in terms of heat, extreme heat? These are their do's and their don'ts. So these are awesome, I think. Best cooling techniques in the order of effectiveness. So the very first one to do, application of cold water. So large volumes of cold water all over the horse's body is the most effective way to cool a horse. So that's running a hose or buckets. Like if you're not near a hose, it's providing something like drums or garbage bins full of water that people can put a bucket in and just throw it at the horse and just keep doing that, and just keep getting another bin full of water, another bin full of water, having them all lined up ready when people come off the eventing course or, the cross-country course, whatever it might be. When they come out of the jumping ring, when they come out of the arena, you don't want to be going, where's cold water? Where's cold water? You want to be able to think about that first. Make sure you've got that. Fans or misting fans, move them to the shade. Aggressive cooling is the most important factor in reducing heat stroke in horses and greatly reduces the risk of collapse and potential injury. So aggressive cooling, that's just constant, full on, we've got to get the temperature down. So aggressive cooling measures should continue until water is no longer heating up on the horse or until the horse's temperature is back to a healthy 38 degrees. So what I've done in the past when I was a groom for a Grand Prix rider is hose the horse, then scraped them down, and then as the water's coming off them from the scraper, is putting my hand under the water and testing the temperature of the water. And then if it was coming off hot, just do it all again. Just keep doing it. Hose after hose after hose. Scrape it off, feel the water, and until that water comes off cool, you just have to keep doing it. Things that don't work. So ice packs. So I know I said at the event, the 3-day event that they've got this weekend, there's ice. What the FEI say is that placing ice packs over large blood vessels, such as those between the hind legs or over jugular, is not effective. It is effective, like eventers use them on the horse's legs to cool the legs down, but having ice that you can put in water to make the water colder is another way of using ice. But putting them over a large blood vessel doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make the cooling down more effective. Ice or cold water in the rectum, don't do that. It's invasive, it's not permitted, dangerous, and ineffective. Wet towels, placing wet towels over the horse actually slows down heat loss. Now, when you think about it, people think that might slow it down, but it actually doesn't, because it's stopping the airflow. So it's like, I don't know if you've ever been to an event or something and you've gone and got a wet, cold washer, and then you put the washer on you and the washer just gets hot. So then you flick the washer in the air and it cools down again, and then you put it back on again. So it's not actually cooling you down. It's just cooling you down for a short period of time until it gets hot again, and then it just doesn't help. So getting airflow around is the best thing, and towels prevent that airflow. There's no advantage to concentrating or applying cold water to specific areas such as large blood vessels, on the neck or between the legs. Cold water, even applied over large muscles, does not cause tying up or muscle damage. So basically just put water, let the water run over the horse and let it kind of drip off. So here's an example of a photo that I found with a horse out from street heat stress. And you can see there he's got a bucket of cold water from an ice bag. So it's the water from the ice bag that's getting put onto the horse. So when to call the vet? Call the vet if the horse shows signs of poor recovery. So if it goes down and then you can't get it back again, this is when you call the vet. So they might be wobbly, especially after exercise. So they might do it, and then afterwards they're like, "Whoa," and it's after they stop that they get wobbly. They may get wobbly. If they're panting, fast and shallow breathing for 10 to 15 minutes after cooling down has begun. So they come up, they've finished their thing, you're hosing them down, they're panting, but if the panting goes for 10 to 15 minutes after the cooling has begun, then they're still in heat stress, and that's when you call the vet. Persistently elevated heart rate, so just can't get the heart rate down. Their gums go dry, or a different color than the normal light pink. So that's something that you can check. That's when to call the vet. And some more things about when to call the vet. That when the horse shows little reaction to people or the environment, when you can't get their attention, when they're kind of zoned out, and you know that they're not with you in terms of, you know, their eyes are open but they're like zoned out. Where the horse appears agitated, distressed, or becomes uncontrollable. So in an emergency situation, try and move the horse toward a shaded area and keep applying large amounts of water. Avoid moving the horse in tight circles, so don't let them, you know, go around the lead rope. If the horse goes down, don't try and force them to get up, leave them down and just keep applying the cold water all over them until help arrives, like in that picture. So the tip here is ensure your club has a list of emergency vets ready and accessible. So always know where the closest vet is, whether they're open on that day, so that you know, even if you call them beforehand and go, can I just check that if you need them, if we need you, we've got this event on, is there someone going to be there? Could you give us the number of your vet on call, just so you're prepared and ready. All right, how your committee can prepare. So assign roles to committee organisers. These are things like keeping watch on the weather forecast and assess the risk and cancel if need be. Now, sometimes it's better to have 2 people nominated to do this rather than this huge debate that goes on with committees where everyone's involved. It'd be better if at the beginning of the year you say, who are the 2 people that make the call on whether the event goes ahead based on weather? Because, you know, you can have these chats that just go for ages and there's a lot of, you know, decision by committee. Nominate 2 people that you know will do the job well and take the responsibility for cancelling if need be. Organise equipment such as ice, misting machines and fans if the WGBT is over 33. So there's that number, 33. You could opt to have a person with cold water and sponge ready. So when someone comes out of the dressage arena, there's a bucket of cold water, there's sponge, and they're just standing there whilst the little, you know, that few minutes of gear check and conversation happens before the horse goes and gets untacked. Someone is already sponging them. Make PA announcements throughout the day. You know, riders get caught up in other stuff and having conversations and doing all sorts of things, and it's just bringing them back to checking their horses and constant vigilance and reminding them throughout the day. Organise a vet to be on site if the WBGT is greater than 33, so just get someone there, just get a vet there. Review the EA hot weather policy and follow the guidelines. So get your head around that, know what's in the policy, know where it is, have a copy printed out. It's not too long, it's not too onerous, it's really clear and really, really useful. Where to go for more information? So this is what I'll send out. So these are really useful places to go. So the EA hot weather policy, that's the link which I'll send out. The EA hot weather policy, there's one separate policy for organising committees, which some of this information that I'm using tonight is from that. The FEI 3 steps to cooling your horse. I'll check that link because I know they've changed a few things on their website. So the FEI 3 steps to cooling your horse, really useful. Optimising performance in challenging climate. So that's a useful document as well. And then they have this whole video series on Beat the Heat. And it was originally started a long time ago when they had the LA Olympics, I think. they've updated it, and it's still, the information in there is still really useful. Very, I think really important. I really enjoyed doing it, and I learnt a lot, and it's just really good information to know, particularly leading into summer. Right, question time. So I'm just going to stop share, and if anyone would like to ask a question, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself if you want to, or stick your hand up, or use the little thing to stick your hand up. I think it's a reaction. You can stick your hand up with a reaction. So if there are any questions, any comments, anything anyone would like to add, please go ahead. Nothing. Okay, covered everything. Has anyone had any experience with dealing with stressed horses? Bruce, did you want to add something?
Yes, Jodie, I have had quite a number of occasions where I've had to cancel because of heat. And there's been other occasions where it was close, and I copped a fair bit of flack from some people who contacted me. What I always do now, which I've been doing for a while, is I keep a half hourly running of what's the humidity and the temperature is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go off the chart, and then I can see it going up. So it might go start, then the whole thing might go to 28, then it drops up to 29, then 30. But generally what happens is the heat, as it gets hotter, the humidity drops, and the humidity is the killer.
Yeah.
And so the graph won't go up that much, but still you've got to be careful with heat. You just don't want it that hot that it's going to be. The other thing we've got to think about is the rider, not just the horse.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a great big akuba on, and they're copping a lot of sun around the back of their neck and on their face. And we've had people collapse.
Yeah,
so you've got to watch that side of it as well. But keep a record. Just keep a record of it. And then
over what length of period? Like a couple of hours? Is that what you mean?
A couple of hours. Keep a couple of hours. And then I've had people contact me, and then I'll just do a copy of it, and I send it straight to them and say, here is a record of how it went today.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just covers your butt.
Yeah, and ultimately it's the rider's decision. The rider's decision, they can decide whether or not they're going to go. No one is making them go to the event if you've kept it going.
No.
And obviously they can't go if you've called it, but you're going to call it based on the information that you've got from the WBGT, as well as what information, you can only make informed decisions. So you're making, as long as you can put your hand on your heart and say, I made an informed decision that I'm happy with, then that's what matters. I did also want to add, Bruce, I know I didn't cover the athlete. My intention is I'm actually doing a course next week with the Office of Sport on athlete in heat. So then I'll gather some information from that and put together a session like this for the athletes. That's my plan.
Very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and it goes without saying that you have a paramedic there for that kind of thing. Yeah, and just it does happen. I've seen it happen with heat.
And you've got to remember, quite often at these places we have judges sitting in a car, and their writer, and those tablets they stop in the heat as well.
Yeah,
and so it can become very difficult for everyone, not just the horse,
Yeah. Exactly. I've seen, the dressage cars having a screen on the window. So take a tea towel or take something that you can put over the window next to you so that you can shut off the sun shining down on you. Yeah. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay.
We will go to Coralie. Hi, Coralie. Just have
Hi. I'm from Sydney Show Jumping Club. So I guess we have cancelled due to weather, and I guess one other key consideration is horses have to travel home, and if we start early to say we're going to beat the heat, potentially the horses are actually travelling at the worst time of the day. So we do take that into consideration as well when we're assessing whether we're going to cancel or not.
Yeah. And you've got to take so much into consideration, like how far are people traveling? You know, if it's a local pony club, you've got locals coming. But if it's, you know, like Sydney 3-day event, they're coming from everywhere, coming from Victoria, you know. So yeah, there's lots of considerations there. Thanks, Coralie. Kerry, you have your hand up.
Yes.
Kerry, yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we've used the wet bulb on a number of occasions. Some occasions we've cancelled, other occasions we've gone ahead. I actually find it extremely easy. It's very black and white. And the other thing also, because it's part of the rule book, I think then riders can't question it.
Yeah, it's not.
So, you know, you bring that out and say, this is what we're going off. This is what the forecast is. Yeah. We're either going to cancel or go ahead. Yep. And it makes it very easy for us.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not a place that typically has a lot of humidity. But, you know, with climate change and everything of recent years, yes, we have. And so we're using that all the time in the summer.
Yeah,
even autumn. Autumn can get quite hot down and humid down here as well.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing I was going to say is with where you can check humidity. So the the Bureau of Meteorology weather app actually shows you what the forecast temperature is and the forecast humidity. It also shows you what the wind is doing. So it's really good when you're coming into this summer period is to just keep looking every so often and getting your head around what does a 30 knot wind feel like as opposed to a 10 wind knot, 10 knots of wind. Because, unless you're kind of into that, you're like, I don't know the difference between what 30 and what 10 is in terms of wind. So, just kind of going, okay, what is it today? What does this feel like? And getting used to like reading that and getting your head around it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as farmers, we're on it all day, every day.
All the time. Yeah, not these city folk.
But there's a lot that aren't. So it's just a case of directing them, and saying, look, we've taken the wet bulb and, measurements, and this is where it's come, and we're not going ahead. So, it's everyone understands when you see that in black and white, which is really good.
Yeah. So we'll leave it there. And if you do think of anything or if I can help in any way, please just contact me at Equestrian New South Wales. And if there's any other information you need, I'm very happy to help. Excellent. Thanks, everyone.